Welcome to the ASHE CIHE 2025 pre-conference virtual keynote. I'm here with my fellow program co-chair, Charlie Matthijs, along with Katie Koo, chair of CIHE, and our keynote speaker, Amy Metcalfe. So I will start with a quick land acknowledgement. So I'm joining from North Dakota, which is the land with the spirit of the Ojibwe and Oyate peoples. So this is also the homeland of Menden, Hidatsa, Arikana Nation, as well as the Spirit Lake Nation and Standing Rock Sioux Tribe and Totter Mountain Band of Chippewa and Sisseton Wahpeton Oyate. And I also want to recognize the land which this year's ASHE conference held in Denver. So you can see in the screen. So I learned that the ASHE volunteer leaders on the conference committee have done an amazing job to pull out this land acknowledgement and also reflecting the history and the meaning of space and place. So I really appreciate their thoughtful efforts. You can find more information in the ASHE webpage. I can find the link and share it with you later. Next. Oops. Okay. So, uh, as a program co-chair of CIHE pre-conference, it is my honor to welcome you to the CIHE pre-conference in Denver on November 12th. This is really special year because ASHE is celebrating its 50th anniversary. So in the spirit of that milestone, our CIHE pre-conference consists of the critical programs for you to reflect your own arc as a scholar and advocate for global social justice. So each of you, I know in this room and then will be in Denver is extraordinary. You have chosen to step beyond your comfort zone, to wrestle with the complexity, and expand your scholarly arc toward the transformation by challenging the boundaries of nations and questioning the normalization of Western epistemologies and perspectives. So if you have not yet registered, please use this QR code or visit the ASHE website to join the CIHE pre-conference. For those already registered, I look forward to seeing you in Denver, and I look forward to connecting with you all later in Denver. All right, so next slide. Here, Katie?
Sure, thank you, Tina. So hello everyone, I'm Katie. I'm serving the CIHE as a chair this year and next year. So I know many of you already joined the CIHE community. If you are not yet, then please consider joining the community so that you can enjoy the community beyond the community. There are the listed benefits as a CIHE members. And for the next page, I'd like to explain about our special events at ASHE this year. Thank you. So the ASHE official conference began on Wednesday, November 12th, as we kick off the CIHE pre-conference, the whole day from 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. at the major conference hotel. But before the Wednesday pre-conference, we do celebrate our own CIHE pre-conference reception on Tuesday night, which is very special and very welcoming environment for everyone. So it's really beyond the CIHE community. If you're not a CIHE member, you're also more than welcome. It will be at the presidential suite. This is our third year to celebrate the CIHE, the night before the pre-conference reception. So I'll meet you there at 7 p.m. and there will be the varieties of the food from the international context. So I will see you on Tuesday and Wednesday. And in our next slide.
Woohoo!
So we are very happy to announce about our another special International Scholars Workshop coffee hour, which is the highlight of the last day of ASHE this year. So it will be on Saturday, November 15th at 7:30 a.m. I know it's very early, but I think it's a very good way to wrapping up your convention and also the last day of ASHE. So I'll meet you at the location here. So please take a photo of this slide and we'll celebrate our continued International Scholars Workshop work groups there. And there will be definitely a coffee and bagels provided for this event. That's it from my end, and I will turn it over to Tina. Thank you.
Okay, now Charlie.
Yes, so it is my distinct pleasure. I am able to introduce our keynote speaker for our CIHE pre-conference keynote. This is Dr. Scott Metcalfe. She has been a long time personal friend, colleague, mentor. She has been a colleague to many of us in the CIHE community. She's been involved with us for many, many years. I remember my first ASHE and CIHE. I think that's where I think I had my first conversation with her. Dr. Metcalfe is a professor in the Department of Educational Studies at British Columbia. She received her PhD in higher education from the University of Arizona. Her research focuses on higher education in Canada and more broadly into the North American regions. Her work has won a number of awards and has been welcomed into and by our international higher education scholarly community. You can see this by her awards, the recognition she has, and the work that she has put out. In her research, she incorporates critical approaches to topics of internationalization, academic labor and mobility, and policy studies in education. She has a deep interest in visual research methods, which today I think we'll see a really good example of this with her keynote talk using Chiharu Shiota's installation, Home Less Home. Dr. Metcalfe in her keynote here will present the notion of transnationalism for transnational purposes, bending the arc of higher education internationalization away from nationalistic definitions. She uses Chiharu Shiota's installation as really a representation of this. Chiharu Shiota's, as an artist, is an internationally renowned artist whose work Home Less Home explores stories of migration, home, connection, memory, and consciousness. Using lines in the forms of string, Shiota creates a large-scale immersive installation that underscores the human connection and experience. As Dr. Metcalfe takes us on this journey, she will call upon each of us to reflect on our own academic and intellectual journeys, trajectories, with the intention of us to reimagine our aspirations and expectations of higher education and internationalization. Please welcome Dr. Scott Metcalfe.
Hi, everyone. Let me get my slides set up here.
Okay.
All right. Oh,
I stopped shared, right?
okay.
Why
I think it's working now. Can everyone
Okay.
see this? Okay.
Yes, we're all good.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for that introduction and for having me here with you here today. It's an enormous pleasure, and it's true that the Council on the Study of International Higher Education for ASHE has been a big part of my professional life, and I'm really grateful to be here and to share this with you today. Also, I just wanted to shout out to my collaborator, Gerardo Blanco from Boston College, who I actually visited this exhibit with over the summer. And so it has a lot of personal connection in that sense. This is something that we do when we go to conferences together, we find in art gallery and go and see how it makes us think differently. And so I wanted to share some of that with you and just suggest that that's, something to do when you go to Denver, find an art gallery, go with a colleague, see what you see. All right, so in this presentation, I aim to create a space for us to consider the predicament that I allude to in this title. If international higher education is currently hanging by a thread, how might we reimagine the next phase of our journey together? And I'll begin with an overview of the session. First, we'll critically situate ourselves within a particular place in this moment, discussing our positionality as academics and political beings at a time of unrest and uncertainty. Next, I will offer propositions for ways we might reconsider our locations and collective agency in this context. This entails a discussion of art and critical public pedagogy, the artistic encounter as an opportunity for reflexivity, moving from conceptual premise through extended engagement with a particular artwork. For this presentation, I will focus on the art installation titled Homeless Home from 2025 by Chiharu Shiota, which you can see part of it in the corner of many of the slides in this presentation. It was installed this summer at the ICA Watershed Gallery in Boston. And after moving through this exhibit together, we'll end with some reflections about the implications of our artistic encounter for our scholarship and activities as international educators, ahead of questions and responses during our closing conversation. At the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, Canada, where I am located as a member of the Faculty of Education and the Department of Educational Studies, we share a commitment to beginning our work together with a land acknowledgement, similar to what we do in ASHE as a professional practice. And we also try to make it one of personal significance. So that's what I'd like to start with here today. I'd like to begin by talking through just a few slides of some artists who really bring forward the notion of political borders and relationality that extends beyond conventional definitions of citizenship and nationhood. At the bottom of my university's web pages, there's a statement now that says, "We acknowledge that UBC's two main campuses are situated within the ancestral and unceded territory of the Musqueam people and the traditional ancestral unceded territory of the Silk Okanagan Nation and their peoples. Land acknowledgements like this one are not universally supported as institutional practice, as we know, although this viewpoint varies from place to place. However, as those of us who study higher education know very well, universities are not apolitical, ahistorical nowheres. I think we could agree that to suggest otherwise is both incomplete and inaccurate. To artfully connect ourselves to the places on which we live and work, in this land acknowledgement, I turn to first to Indigenous artist Joanne Quick-to-See Smith, an enrolled citizen of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes, and who passed away earlier this year at the age of 85. Smith approached maps in her work and other subject matter as a way to discuss Indigenous presence and resurgence within the North American continent. In this painting, titled State Names from 2000, Smith depicted a map that shows part of Canada, the United States, and Mexico. Notably, she only included the provincial and state names that were derived from Indigenous languages and places, highlighting the absent presence of Indigenous nations and territory in contemporary life. For example, my own province, British Columbia, is not included on the map for obvious reasons, right? British Columbia. In the same year that Smith painted this image, she also painted a similar one titled Tribal Map from 2000, where the names of states and provinces were replaced with the names of Indigenous nations and reserves, inverting the naming conventions of state names. Smith's work emphasizes that place names, lines, and borders are not all-encompassing demarcations of nationhood, citizenship, and belonging. Continuing this theme, here I compare the anonymously drafted Surrealist Map of the World from 1929 with Canadian artist Greg Curneau's Map of North America from 1972. The Surrealist map expresses an early 20th century's absurdist rejection of patriotism amid a world struggling with imperialism and the aftermath of the First World War. Continents are stretched beyond their proportional size. Whole countries are eliminated or diminished. You'll notice that the United States is not visible. And place names are exaggerated or completely absent. Perhaps inspired by this reference, Cournot's North America in the 1970s exists completely without the US, showing Canada and Mexico with a shared border rather than positioned on either side of their missing bilateral partner. Given the date of the work and the ongoing Vietnam War at the time, it's not surprising perhaps that the military actions of the neighboring country may have had an effect on the artist's perspective. In the present geopolitical reality, we might say that if the longest unguarded border in the world is indeed nothing more than an arbitrary line, as we have been told, this decades-old rendering may suggest, at least rhetorically, that different forms of North American relations are plausible. So what does any of this matter for international education? Well, as we read the headlines in our own institutional press releases, the actions of nations are not independent. In these recent articles from University World News, we see that international student policy changes are leading to lower enrollments and fewer student visa approvals, even though the policy directives stem from different national contexts and different rationales. Not seen here in these headlines are the stories of disappearance, forced migration, and self-censorship amid fears of reprisal. Certainly, the retraction of the receiving country policies that have previously supported international education has affected individuals and institutions in various ways, mostly negative. For some caught in the turmoil, it is decidedly not good. International uncertainty in the sector has driven conversations about new institutional partnerships and more regional or continental consortia. Some internationally mobile students are also making alternative plans as new possibilities present themselves. However, other students are experiencing the breakdown of public support for internationalization, with few protections and little recourse. There is too much uncertainty to offer solutions in a space like this. We first need to ask ourselves some tough questions, starting with, who are we here now? And by we, I mean internationally mobile academics. And by here, I mean working within broken globalist institutions. And now, I mean during what has been called end-stage capitalism. Rather than premature solutions, I'd like to propose an alternative method for critical thinking. Remember that, critical thinking? We might create some creative responses. This entails entering into an artistic encounter with an artwork that was created as a form of public pedagogy, guided by a conceptual premise for the purpose of collective reflection upon the state of international higher education. As we begin this line of inquiry, we might first ask, what is public art and what is critical public pedagogy? The philosopher Heine wondered, who speaks for the public? And she continued by stating that artists do not have privileged vision, but they do have a practiced eye and the ability to speak in a rich variety of languages: verbal, visual, conceptual, sensual, serious, humorous, figurative, and rational. She continued by saying sometimes and somehow they break through ordinary expectation and cause people to venture upon new perspectives. The necessary conditions for public art in a city such as Boston are explicitly stated by the Office of the Mayor, Michelle Wu, who says in this web statement, and I quote, "Public art in Boston is vibrant and informative. As the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture and the Boston Art Commission, we believe in the power and impact of art that can be experienced by everyone for free. The curatorial vision for the city of Boston is to foster the creation and collection of artworks that reflect the people, ideas, histories, and futures of Boston, the traditional homeland of the Massachusetts people, and the home of the neighboring Wampanoag and Nipmuc people. We aim to commission and approve artworks that engage communities and directly respond to, enrich, and enliven the urban environment." We can see the enactment of this sentiment and these policies in the public art and public arts potential for critical public pedagogy in the curator's description of the selected theme of the exchange in the 2025 Boston Public Art Triennial. The curators stated, "The exchange invites artists and experts to work together to create impactful artwork that presents compelling narratives about the issues we face as a society. Through this experience, we hope to spark meaningful dialogue, foster empathy, and inspire new ways of understanding in our shared future. May the art open your mind to new possibilities." So the triennial ran from May 22nd of this year through today, October 31st. And it connected community partners across various museum sites in the city, public spaces, and art galleries. The artwork we will examine in this presentation, Chiharu Shiota's Homeless Home, was included in the triennial. And you can see a little thumbnail of the installation in the center of this slide. Public art has particular relevance to larger conversations about democratic citizenship and public speech. Curriculum theorists Roberts and Steiner connected critical pedagogy in the public sphere to the purposes of engaging in radical democracy by stating that critical public pedagogy broadens the pedagogical field to include the public terrain of culture and thereby promotes autonomous political agency by expanding possibilities for critique, self-definition, and praxis. Regarding connections between urban spaces and creative practice, Recount noted that in a context where mainstream democratic processes seem to be faltering, where calls for transformation and decolonization are heightening, and where where urban studies tends to teeter on the brink of despair or delusionary optimism, exploring artful forms of urban inquiry offers important new opportunities to becoming otherwise through knowing, studying, and acting within and upon the urban. And I'd like to suggest that if we replace Sita's words here about urban studies, the field of urban studies, and we substitute it for higher education studies, I think we're speaking to about a similar space, even though this was from 2020, that we also may be teetering upon the brink of despair or delusionary optimism. As we enter conversations around the place and purpose of international higher education in these times, we might turn to the artistic encounter for a new descriptive vocabulary. Building upon the notion of statelessness, having lived in a counter-national space herself, literary theorist Marianne Hirsch noted that it's through this participation in the artistic encounter that we can claim one of the rights Hannah Arendt saw as essential to survival, the right to belong to political community. In the hiatus of that statelessness, community does not pre-exist, it must be created. When public spaces for learning about how to participate within a political community are what we used to call civic education are eroded, educators might intentionally create these spaces for critical public engagement. Utilizing this artistic counter for productive, collective dialogue can be approached by examining public art in these ways. First, as a spatial metaphor, the art museum or gallery can act as an institutional proxy for public-private knowledge and, to a certain extent, public-private spaces. What is possible in different types of public-private spaces? And we might contrast then what can be said in one and not the other, or what can be said more explicitly in art that can't be said in higher education, or in higher education that can't be said in art. Case studies of these types of public art installations can provide opportunities for us to consider collective public action between artists, community collaborators, curators, and the general and public. So who is or who can be involved? And in this, we might learn from the ways in which the artists and the art community is partnering with the public through elementary schools, through community groups, through open events that provide opportunities for us to think, well, why can't we do that now in higher education? What's preventing us from having those connections? And then finally, as a conceptual premise, and this is like thinking through art, like actually having an opportunity to use art as a platform for new ways of thinking. So, and for collective meaning making. What conceptual premise guides the encounter? So deciding that I'm going to enter into this art space with a particular problem in mind, and I'm going to focus on this as I move through the space, and really then at the end try to reflect on what I've learned from this form of public engagement. So for the purposes of this presentation, we enter the artistic encounter through this particular conceptual premise I'm going to offer. Chiharu Shiota's Home Less Home permits an embodied inquiry regarding the relationalities and rationalities of higher education internationalization. Now, I realize it's not going to be fully embodied because of the space that we're in an online presentation, but I'm going to do my best in this presentation to provide some of that experience of moving through the artwork because this no longer exists. This was a temporary installation. It's something that is very ephemeral in that way. And so none of us can see it again. We can't go there together now. So we'll use the images and the description as a way to kind of simulate that experience of walking through the exhibit together. Preparing for an event like this, whether you're preparing with your students or colleagues or a community group, a professional organization, it is useful, not required. I mean, there's certainly spontaneous gallery going, but it's useful to encounter it with a meta-analytical process. So we're preparing ourselves prior to attending these events. So looking ahead, first of all, you have to know what's available, what opportunities are on the horizon. And you'll notice a lot of universities and in their own art galleries or in public art galleries and museums will have sort of a what's on kind of area of their websites that talks about exhibition schedules, event calendars, and you may have to do some of your own location scouting. It's useful to, once you've identified a public art piece or a show that you want to see what's already been said. Can we learn more about the artist through a published biography? Are there previous work from that artist that we might try to find out more about? Have there been reviews of this particular show or press releases from the gallery or the museum or for the artists themselves? Are there videos on YouTube that we can watch to better understand how this piece relates to others and this particular artist's overall scope of work? We might consider explicitly the space and place of the exhibit or the performance, and including in that the historical context of the venue and its location, because that really does inform the piece, whether or not we're completely aware of it. And what is the current role of this venue and location in the area? And particularly important for public art to understand these questions. And then funding, always following the money. Who is sponsoring the show or event? And then how much do you pay when you go, and how much is it? Is it affordable? Is it free? Is it something that's free on a particular day? Is it open all year for elementary school students? Is it convenient for people who are traveling to the area? What I learned in my sort of meta-analytical process of this particular show, watching some of the curatorial videos surrounding it, I learned that even though this venue is seasonal, it's usually only open in the summertime, they extend their calendar into the school year so that local elementary schools can go on field trips. And so that awareness that they play that role in the local community is really important and something that they actively engage as part of their calendar. And then finally, access and audience. Who is the ideal audience for this particular venue or this artist? And how accessible is it to the community and to visitors? Before going much further, I'd like to introduce the artist, Chiharu Shiota, who was born in Osaka, Japan, and who lived in Berlin, Germany since the late 1990s. One of the aspects of Shiota's biography that stood out to me relative to the field of international higher education is that she studied painting at the university level in Japan and then became a short-term exchange student in Australia, making connections that would later lead her to be invited to study art in Germany, where she has remained. International migration and corporal transience figure prominently in her work, as well as themes of memories sustained in places and objects. A significant theme in her art is presence in the absence, or existing within the gap, confronting the philosophical notion of the absent presence, which focuses instead on the thing that is missing. She continues to explore this presence in the absence in her current show, Two Home Countries, at the Japan Society Gallery in New York. It's worth noting that while Shota's exhibit title for this show mentions two home countries, referencing her own countries of Japan and where she lives in Germany, Japan does not permit dual citizenship. When she was an undergraduate exchange student at Australia's National University School of Art in Canberra, Shiota realized that painting could not solely contain her vision and self-expression. At Canberra, she moved in front of the canvas and entered the space of live performance art in her piece titled Becoming Painting from 1994. During this period, she also experimented with three-dimensional line art, as seen in One Line from 1994. In these early experiments, Shiota engaged with black, red, and white, and has continued with these tonalities throughout her career. So I'll show some examples of her installation work that uses red, black, and white materials, as well as memory-laden objects and fiber art, such as wool thread or cording. The first one here is called The Endless Line from 2024 and was exhibited in South Korea. Oftentimes, Shiota will talk about moving from drawing to drawing with line in the air. So kind of extending the artist's vision into these three-dimensional spaces. The second is called Between Worlds from 2024. And this one was exhibited in Turkey. And I'll just note here, because we're going to talk about it later, the suitcases on the floor underneath these red webs. And finally, the third with the white is called Circulating Memories from 2024. And that was in her hometown of Osaka, Japan. The symbolism of the colors varies across her artwork, although a general sense, black, as she notes, black signifies the otherworldly or cosmic realm, which also includes death. Red constitutes the lifeblood that connects all of us, especially those who are dear to us. And white is a space of memory and the transmission of knowledge, also representing the web-like synapses of the brain. Shota's artwork also contains references to her concerns about dying, having twice survived cancer. She candidly describes these feelings in interviews, such as in this video. She says, "I was diagnosed with cancer for a second time. I was thinking a lot about life and death. And also my daughter was 9 years old. I started thinking about how can I be with her? How can I stay with her? And what does she think about the soul?" In her artwork, Shiota expresses these thoughts not only as personal struggles, but as being universal to the human condition. In making further connections to international education, through Shota's artwork, I am again made aware of the body's fragility and the complicated preservation of health caused by movement from one medical system to another, from one form of social currency and security to another. I also think about the trailing families, spouses and children, who travel along with international students and academics from home to home, country to country. The artwork for Artistic Encounter, we've said, is Homeless Home from 2025, installed at the ICA Watershed in Boston, Massachusetts, in this seasonal satellite gallery of the Institute for Contemporary Art in Boston. The installation of Homeless Home was supported by the Japan Foundation, the Lubin Family Foundation, and was the site of the Boston Public Art Triennial, as mentioned earlier. The free exhibit ran from May 22nd to September 1st, 2025. The ICA Watershed produced a video that played on a loop at the entrance of the gallery space, which is now hosted on their website and on YouTube. And it's very short. I encourage you to see it at some point. In the video, Shiota discusses the symbolism behind her use of red string, noting that it relates to Ume no Aikai Ito, the red thread of fate. This is the tie that binds us to our past, present, and future relationships, wherever those companions may be in this world or beyond, with the connections being both inevitable and unending. In a New York Times article that described the opening of the show, she was quoted as saying, "Many times I'm using red string, the color of blood, symbolic of family, nation, religion, survival." The ICA Watershed video interview continues to share Shiota's insights on the creative process. She describes her interest in memory and found objects, which she collects from thrift stores and antique shops. In a previous interview, she said, "All of my found objects have lots of memory inside of them, and I can feel their presence. This is the theme of my work, existence in absence." To situate the ICA Watershed in the Boston area, we can see from this map that it's located very close to Boston Logan International Airport. I'm sure many of you have been through that airport at some point in your lives. In the present as well as in the past, this area has witnessed many arrivals and departures, whether by land, air, or sea, considering also the number of colleges and universities in the Boston area. The Logan Airport is also an educational hub of sorts, the place that connects many students and academics to their home cities and their temporary campus homes. From these Google Street View maps, we can see that the ICA Watershed Gallery is part of the Boston shipyards, and the building has a long history of service in the shipbuilding industry. It's located between the shoreline and the residential neighborhood of East Boston. Visitors can access free street parking or public transit. If attendees had previously visited the Institute of Contemporary Art, located on the opposite shore of the downtown waterfront district, there's a water taxi available. Architecturally speaking, the ICA Watershed is a long, narrow building that has open bays on either end, recalling its former role as a workshop for boat repair on the waterfront. The industrial nature of the site was retained for this seasonal gallery, which is only open in the summer months. The shape of the gallery influenced the installation of Homeless Home in several ways. First, the narrow entry space was filled with a reinstallation of another of Shiota's artworks, leaving the wider and longer area of the rear gallery for the main exhibition. The entryway gallery provided an opportunity for a partial reinstallation of a work titled Accumulation, Searching for the Destination. And you see here the suitcases. This exhibit included antique suitcases suspended by red cord, with some of the suitcases containing mechanical devices that gently rock them in a swaying motion. The height of the suspended suitcases gradually increases as you enter the gallery space, creating a sense of lifting into the air as well as moving forward, like the airplanes taking off at nearby Logan Airport. Through the hanging threads, you can catch a glimpse of the main installation. And if you see on the left-hand side photo, underneath the exhibit, you also see railroad tracks that were part of the original shipbuilding yard that brought a lot of materials into the area for repair and construction of the ships. Shiota has installed several versions of accumulation searching for the destination in several countries, serving as an actual mobile monument to international travel. Here we can see examples of these installations, each with their unique stylization. So from France, Taiwan, Tokyo, the UK, and Kagawa, Japan. Accumulation search for the destination, to me, speaks of the many types of accumulation associated with international travel and academic mobility. Distance, time zones, frequent flyer points, sleepless nights, passport stamps, visas. We can also even think about the red string as being red tape of immigration. Searching for the destination emphasizes a sense of never-ending mobility and the sensation of movement that continues long after stopping. Are we there yet? Once you pass accumulation, this little excerpt of accumulation, you have a better view of the full extent of Homeless Home, which proceeds down the gallery space to the end of the hall. On the right is gallery text that describes the exhibit in English and in Spanish. Adjacent to the larger sign is a smaller one with the following description. And please bear with me, I'm just going to read it for you. Homeless Home meditates upon the question, what makes a home when home is left behind? The installation features an enormous field of red and black ropes forming the shape of a house. Within this symbolic form, Chiharu Shiota arranges well-worn household furniture and suspends thousands of papers. Printed on these papers are photographs, letters, and documents contributed by individuals in the Boston area. The combination of materials underscores how objects, stories, and memories form a sense of home, even when no physical structure is present. Visitors are invited to travel along the pathways through this installation. The ICA Watershed curatorial staff solicited responses from the public by social media and other forms of public outreach, including their existing relationships with public schools in the East Boston area. In an Instagram post from February 2025, the gallery asks the public to participate in the installation by saying, "We're calling for submissions of stories and images exploring what home means, what it feels like to leave home, and what it takes to rebuild it." So in the description that follows, I'm going to narrate a sort of guided meditation of what it would feel like to encounter the artwork based on my own experiences. While this may feel a bit like a choose-your-own-adventure novel, because I'm going to use it in a particular way, the choices, of course, here are predetermined because I'm going to be guiding you through it. But I encourage you, again, to find your own space to try out this method of artistic encounter in the near future. So after reading the gallery text, you're not really sure exactly how to proceed, but if you can remember, there was this very long line of chord that really didn't seem like you should enter it. So you kind of gravitate a little bit towards the left, and it seems appropriate to move towards what appears to be a small break in the cascade of ropes, perhaps indicating a pathway of some kind. It's a bit disorienting and confusing, and you're not sure where to stand. You're afraid of touching the ropes because you're not supposed to be doing that. You're in a gallery. You're not supposed to touch the art. So you're trying to figure out a way forward. And as you look through the space made by the cut string that creates this person-sized path, you begin to see a shape of a roof line formed in the contrast between the red and the black string. When you take a closer look at the installation, you see that there are distinct areas of red string and distinct areas of black string. And they're not interspersed, really. They're rather creating areas of solid color. Looking very carefully, you can also see that above you, some of the cording is actually tied red string to black string above your head, visible as you look towards the ceiling. Below you, there's an interesting pattern of paint stains on the concrete flooring that interacts with the red and black cording, but you're not sure if this is an unintentional coincidence or an interaction that is normally there. Is the paint from before the installation, or was it somehow accentuated for this particular artwork? You're not really sure. Throughout the string home, you see old wooden furniture. Some of these are from the press releases. We know they were purchased from local antique shops, so they're old Boston furniture in consultation with the artist. Pieces were selected to show household use and wear and tear from everyday living, as well as for stylistic and thematic aspects. You see a desk, a dining table, and chairs, an old-fashioned sewing machine, several other types of seating arrangements. Standing in front of the furniture pieces, your sight is interrupted by these black cords. It's difficult to see the furniture and the paper hanging above them in great detail. The black cords separate you from the objects, creating a perceptual barrier. You begin to realize that it's only the black cords in front of you and the red are kind of surrounding the whole exhibit. When you try to use your phone camera, perhaps, to see beyond the threads, to zoom in to some of these pieces of paper here and there, you see one that looks like the painting of a house. So let's look at that one in more detail. And the handwritten caption says, "The different colors of the piece represent each emotion of a new home. The dark way represents the danger of the immigration." Throughout the installation, you have glimpses of these personal stories, and they feel incomplete of sorts because there's so many papers and you can't get close enough to examine most of them. Finally, you come to the pathway at the end through Homeless Home, arriving at the foot of a bed that is adjacent to a chair. It is now apparent to you that the journey began with a bed and a chair at the entrance of the installation, and that there must be some sort of reason for this. You look back through the house of string, and you note that each bed is covered with white linen, and each chair faces the respective bed. As with all of the furniture groupings, white papers are hung in such a way as to appear to be fluttering forth from the beds into the air. In Homeless Home, the two beds frame the entrance and the exit to the House of Black String, which is surrounded in red, perhaps signifying the mortal space between being born and dying. In between, there is a movement and rest, sharing meals, working, and dreaming. The title of the installation may provide some additional insight, as this home is not so much a solid house as it is a translucent space for the recollections of living, where white, fluttering bird-like memories tell stories of an entire community. The encounter with Homeless Home is comforting and unsettling at the same time. As seen in Homeless Home, Shiota frequently uses pieces of white paper in her work. Sometimes these are products of community collaborations, as we saw in the Boston installation, and other times they're just blank pieces of paper that are included. Here we see examples from Mexico called "The World Is Yours" from 2025, and from Osaka, Japan, "The Circle of Connection." In seeing Shiota's use of white paper in Homeless Home, I'm reminded of the 19th century Japanese printmaker Hokusai. In this famous print, you may recall seeing this at some point in your life, part of the series titled 36 Views of Mount Fuji. A sudden gust of wind blows a stack of papers that someone's carrying into the breeze, sending the sheets aloft alongside tree leaves and one villager's headwear. Copies of this print and others like it by Hokusai and other printmakers circulated through the art world in the 19th century on a global scale, influencing the ways that artists composed scenes of everyday life. In this comparison, I see how the art world has contributed to the transnational movement of ideas and knowledge, as well as memories from place to place over time. The beds in Homeless Home connect this installation to Shiota's other use of beds, as in these examples. At times, it is clear that Shiota intends for the beds in her installation to resemble hospital beds. symbolic of her experiences with illness and uncertain recovery, while at other times they're more representative of everyday furniture. Often Shiota's beds are enveloped in black thread, which could represent the veil of night that stretches between the place of dreaming and the afterlife. Thematically, these installations connect to the living and the dying, with titles such as During Sleep from 2025 and 2028, and Sleeping is Like Death from 2016. Okay, so we're almost done here. Some final reflections. In creating Homeless Home, Shiota and her collaborators asked the local community, what makes a home when home is left behind? Relating this line of inquiry to our own field, we might ask, what makes international higher education when internationalization is left behind? What ties global academia together in a post-international world? What does existence in absence mean for international higher education? Thank you for your attention. I hope that you have a chance to see some of Shiota's artwork. If you're in the New York area, you'll have a chance to see it at the Japan Society Gallery for a period of time anyway, but I'm sure you'll have a chance to see some in the future, as well as to certainly see many of these pieces on video and in books. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy. That was inspiring, thought-provoking, and for me, very moving in a lot of different ways with the color, the imagery, and just thinking there. So thank you. We are now going to move to the question and answer portion here of our time, and we are going to stop the recording here, so we can have a more free discussion and openly. So